I have a Disney-approved mug. One.
You get that for free?
Hell no. You forget already what it was like to
Get your
work
little
down
Mickey
Quincy?
Mouse statue for the number of years you worked there.
Somewhere down here.
Yeah.
What about after my 15 years of service? They said, yeah, you got to turn in your silver pass. I go, I don't even get the rest of the year to try to show up at Disney for free.
All right, so here we are.
Let everybody in right at 7 people, a bunch of people are in the waiting room.
They're all liquored up too.
They've been tailgating.
That would be hotel tailgate.
OTL tailgate.
Now,
That's
do you want,
SNL
do you want, do
premise.
you want me to
Get the writer's room going on that.
Bob, do you want me to go? Da-da-da-da-da-da-da?
Yeah, we
Want
need
you to do
that.
or-
Feels like a reunion show.
Yeah.
Where's Steve and Robin?
Steve
Robin's
Harrison
still
and
there.
Robin J. Dunn.
I haven't spoken to Steve in a while, but Robin's still there. I talked to her about
Still there?
doing well.
Right. I'm going to start letting people in, and then we'll start in about a minute.
They also have the option on YouTube, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And we're taking questions at the end.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll go about 60 or so, 65, and then we'll Q&A and tuck you into your Dr. Denton's by 8:30, guaranteed.
Okay, let's get started. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's virtual event, co-hosted or hosted by the Seton Hall Center for Sports Media, entitled "The $1 Trillion Question: Does Integrity Matter?" We are joined by an esteemed panel, led by one of our esteemed alums, Bob Lee, who will be taking it away in just a second. We're gonna go for about 60 minutes or so, and then at the end, we'll leave plenty of time for questions. If people have questions as we're going on, feel free to put them in the chat, and then we'll acknowledge as many as we possibly can at the very end. You can also raise your hand when we leave time for questions. At the Center for Sports Media, we're not only training the next generation of sports journalists, we're trying to inform and drive the conversation with some of the biggest issues in sports. And that leads us to tonight. And to steer us here is a man who has done this for so many years at ESPN with Outside the Lines, and tonight will be a very similar type of conversation. So it is my great pleasure to be able to say that I am co-hosting this event with the great Bob Lee. And Bob, I now turn it over to you.
Thank you, BJ. And BJ's leadership as executive director of the center is the primary factor that has us feeling really good about where we're at. About a year ago, I asked a major figure in college sports about the concept of loyalty and how it was playing out in the mid-2020s. And he looked at me like I had 3 heads and a clown's bow tie on. Loyalty? Loyalty is a close cousin of integrity. So let's start with some well-known facts. You can make an advent calendar out of all the betting and gambling scandals in pro and college sports over the last 18 months. You probably could make a run at buying out Elon Musk with the buyout money spent on college football coaches in the last 4 or 5 years. Add to that the question of who's controlling sports media, and the mission of American higher education, And we posed it as that trillion-dollar question: does integrity matter? Now, I hope we don't come across as boomer alarmists, our hair on fire, saying the sky is falling and civilization is teetering on extinction, even if it is. Things certainly have changed. We got a new reality. We have a new generation and many more digits on the accounting sheet where we accrue values. Now, values like a mark, a yen, a buck, or a pound, but values, do they matter? As in Menschkeit, the space in a handshake, or the trust that vital decisions are not inevitably always decided by the last dollar. What a group to talk about this. The most dangerous place for the last several decades to stand in American sports is between the truth and Andrea Kramer, because she's going to get to the truth. 9-time Emmy winner, Peabody Award winner, Roselle Award, Sports Broadcast Hall of Fame, you know her from HBO, ESPN, and currently the NFL Network. No one has a more diverse and accomplished portfolio than Andrew Brandt, director of the Morad Center for Sports Law at Villanova. I heard a Villanova alum got a big promotion recently in Rome. A former front office executive with the Packers, a player agent, a league administrator, currently advising schools on the new landscape of NIL. And Darren Rovell joins us tonight, and he was reporting on sports business before it was cool. Landmark work at CNBC and at ESPN, worked at the Action Network. He has founded Collect, which is part of the $35 billion economy of sports collectibles. We got a lot to talk about, and hopefully we'll have some Q&A as well. You talk about does integrity matter, and it seems to go hand in hand with the explosion in dollars. Andrea, if I were to ask you, how has, and you know the NFL so well, how has the culture in and around the NFL changed in the last several years? And how much of that is attributable to the explosion of values and digits and billions? What would you say?
Well, first of all, Bob, it's great to be on with you. As I have said, if Bob Lee asks you to join, you have no other answer but how quickly and how long do you need me for? I think it's interesting that today we are gathering on the day when Missouri became the 39th state, plus DC and Puerto Rico, to legalize sports betting. So the proliferation just continues around the country. Now, interestingly, back in 2012, when the NCAA, NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, the NFL, they sued the state of New Jersey to prevent sports betting from being permitted all around the country. And in a sworn statement in the lawsuit, Roger Goodell, the commissioner, said, and I quote, "If gambling is freely permitted on sporting events, normal incidents of the game, such as bad snaps, dropped passes, turnovers, penalties, and play calling, inevitably will fuel speculation, distrust, and accusations of point shaving or game fixing," unquote. Well, Bob, things have changed, right? 2018, PASPA gets overturned by the Supreme Court. And very simply, it's amazing how gambling is anathema until you can make money off of it. And
Well, they
that's
got one right up to they had an off-the-shelf plan, obviously, right? The minute the Supreme Court ruled, boom, they were in it to win it.
they were in it to win it. By that time, also, you have to remember that they had already decided that the Raiders were moving to Las Vegas. The Golden Knights had already made the commitment to move to Vegas. So, I mean, like you say, we don't need any pearl clutching. There's enough of that goes on. I think it's probably fair to say that whether you want to call it hypocrisy, whether you want to call it cognitive dissonance, whatever you want to call it, it exists. And I just think that the biggest thing for me, and I hope we all get to discuss it at some point in the next hour, because I really want to hear what the three of you have to say, is where do we go from here? Because what steps need to be taken? Because there clearly needs to be some sort of governance, oversight, maybe the same way financial institutions are, but there has to be something that is going to be done, because you, at this point, I hate to use say the Pandora's box is open, nobody's closing it. So we're not going back.
They're going to sell it and subdivide it into condos. Pandora's box. Andrew, obviously gambling, we could do the whole hour on gambling easily. I mean, I never envisioned the day we would be doing something with the Center for Sports Media. We had, for example, indictment, pull screen grabs that show pitchers throwing balls into the dirt. So gambling is part of this, uh, but gambling is also part of the explosion of revenues and $1 billion. That's suddenly that's an okay amount of money, but we need many billions to get things done. How has that affected, changed, reshaped the NFL?
It totally has. And like Andrew said, just thanks to you. I mean, one of my favorite people on air and off air, always, for Bob Lee to host this. What a treat. Listen, I'll sort of start where Andrea did. Just I got to give the viewers and listeners some perspective here. In 2010, I'm with the Green Bay Packers, and we're sitting around before the season started, training camp. Somebody brings up, hey, why don't we do a fantasy draft? Like, just we'll do it. Coaches, scouts, executives. I'm like, that sounds cool, but I'm the lawyer. So I'm like, I got to call the league. I got to see if that's okay. Like, and they're like, Andrew, don't call the law. You're just this lawyer. Why are you calling the league? Like, let's just do it. And we decided no money and we couldn't draft Packers. So simple. But I had to call the league. So I did. I called my legal contact at the NFL Management Council and said, hey, we're going to do a fantasy draft, season long, no money. We're not going to draft any Packers. Are we cool? And there was a pregnant pause. And then he said to me, Andrew, we didn't have this conversation. I said, what? He said, how's your family? I said, okay, so there's
unmarked bench parked outside with a guy's hunched over in the back. I mean,
like there's the context. So whatever it was, and then of course, as Andrew said, 2012 NFL, along with the other leagues and the NCAA, fought like hell. Chris Christie in the state of New Jersey for 6 years in court. And of course, as a legal scholar in this area, I said there's no way in hell the Supreme Court takes this case. They've lost, meaning New Jersey has lost at every level. No way. And I was wrong, as was the Solicitor General and everyone else. They took the case. I grew up in Washington, D.C. I'd never been to the Supreme Court. I went for ESPN, and I'm like, oh my God, these justices are going to side with New Jersey.
what swayed them?
I just think it was you like to call it a sports betting case. It was really a states' rights case that we, as the government, federal, are not going to impinge on a state's rights to do something like this, which is basically all about what we're talking about, all about making money. Chris Christie paying for Atlantic City, getting people there when there's no Super Bowl or March Madness, and figuring out a way that they could make some money. So, the NFL and all the leagues, I believe this, I'm sure everyone does. They were rooting against this for 6 years. But once, like you said, once the tables turned, once Justice Alito said PASPA is unconstitutional,
Jersey guy, by the way.
they turned. Quick story on Jersey. I sat in that courtroom, but I didn't see anything, Bob, because
What?
my view, I was sitting directly behind Chris Christie. He blocks out the sun. Right. So there I was. Heard it, but I didn't see it. So anyway, now we have the NFL turning tables because the monetization angles were just too strong. This, as Darren knows so well, the buy-in from all the different sponsors and these two companies that were startups in 2015, FanDuel and DraftKings, they blitzed the NFL with advertising. They
And
became
they had
monetary.
spent the prior 5, 7 years swearing up and down that fantasy sports is not gambling.
Oh, I asked Goodell
But,
about that.
but they had the skeleton, they had the whole thing wired to, again, like the NFL, turn on a dime, right?
Was ready to go. And this idea that fantasy wasn't gambling and the Vegas, which Andrea mentioned, when I was covering those meetings for ESPN, I asked the owners, John Mara, all of them, I said, we have any issues with Vegas? And they're like, yeah, it's a tourism market, kind of a smaller market. I'm like, gambling? No, no, no. It's the most regulated market in the world. It will be fine. So it just shows you what changed. And then the subject, I'm sure we'll talk much more. I'll let Darren talk, but it's just like integrity. Like the integrity of a gambling product right now, for all the reasons we're going to talk about, young people addiction, is concerning. It really is.
By the way,
Oh.
just really super quick before we get to Darren, I want to tell you, you were saying that you were so surprised that the Supreme Court took the case. In 2017, I did a story for Real Sports, which predated all of
Right.
this. We were ahead of the game, no pun intended, on legalized sports betting. I sat with Chris Christie at the governor's mansion, and he's the one who said, it's over. It's done. They've put teams in Vegas. There's no way they can't overturn it. So he obviously he wanted to be optimistic, but for him that was the turning point. There was no going back once you and how could it be? How could you not once you put the teams there? So
Yeah. Hey, Darren, I want to tell you a little story, because you've done work in the sports gaming field as well. A couple of maybe a month ago, Seton Hall's playing Monmouth University. BJ and I are watching separately at our respective homes. We've got a text string open. We're watching the game on ESPN Plus. Spreads at 12.5 if you're going to bet the whole game. And the last four, and this game's out of Seton Hall's got the game won, but it's at 13, it's at 11, it's at 12, it's at 10, it's hit a 3. And it was, and I am not in any way, shape, or form. First of all, neither of us had any money down on the game. I'm not suggesting anybody was playing around with anything, but it was uncanny. It was uncanny that if you had $50 down at 12.5, either giving
How the hell do these guys nail this? How does it possibly?
How does that happen?
It's just algorithms, and they just every game gives you more information. My first gambling story ever was in 2004. So I was at ESPN 3 years. I did not know gambling much, even though I covered the business of sports, because why would I at that point? It wasn't part of my childhood. I was sitting at a bar in New York City, not planning to work, and Chris Duhon hit that half-court shot in the semifinals that basically made the spread. Anyone who had bet on UConn, now UConn won, but they did not cover the spread. I saw a kid in a UConn jersey at the bar go like this. And his team had just advanced to the final game. And he looked like he was going to be a ghost. And I really didn't know what to think, and it took me a while. And we didn't have it. You couldn't find it. You couldn't find a spread easily unless you had the New York Post or Danny Sheridan USA Today. Those were the only two places I was going to find it. You weren't going to. You actually were not going to find it on the internet. And Danny said, I called up Danny, and he said that I think that swung $100 million, and at that time it wasn't even legal. So it's been interesting to cover it all the way up, because I was the first really mainstream reporter to cover betting full time. And it's amazing because I remember going to the NHL meeting in Las Vegas when they announced the team was going to be there. And I asked Gary Bettman, I said, so will people be able to bet in Las Vegas? And it's almost like he didn't really think about it. And he's like, well, not close, not close, not at the MGM there. And I'm thinking to myself, I mean, it's that makes no sense. Um, and anyone who denied that Vegas was a big deal always needed to look at the TV ratings, market 44 or whatever, but always in the top 5. And it just showed you. I'm going to have one more thought, which is that we always thought that it would be the college athletes that would really blow this up, and it's amazing that the pro scandals are even bigger, because we always said the pros had the money, and so if the pros had the money, they didn't need the money. But then you see these guys, as you said, when you can bet on the first pitch of the 6th inning.
Yeah.
And the guy throws just what a ridiculous.
There it is.
There it is. Like, you don't even try to come close to the plate because someone paid $5,000 for that to be done, and the guy's making millions. You don't think that's going to happen. And so it is between Porter, between Terry Rozier, all these, the pro part of this is probably the most amazing part, and the part that has not that was not really thought of.
It kind of defies logic.
I'm fascinated by the whole psychology of this
Mm.
because you've got athletes in some cases making millions and millions of dollars just to make a couple of extra $1,000, what may seem to them like chump change for doing this. And in talking to a couple of former athletes, it's the competitive mindset. And I want to go back really quickly. You were talking about 2004. I'm going to go back even further. Okay. I'm at ESPN. It's 1996. My big Super Bowl piece is I am reporting on a little known program, except Andrew probably heard of it because it was the Packers Super Bowl and they were doing it then, called Smash for Cash. What it was an incentive program that players put together on their own for big hits, interceptions, and they'd put a pot together. And the team couldn't do it because it would be a violation of the salary cap. And sometimes the pot could get, Reggie White talked about how the pot at one point got up to $9,000. And not only did you have players talking so honestly in the story, it's 1996, mind you, you would never have that honesty today. But the players said, one of the questions I posed to them back then is, why do a couple of $100 matter to guys who are making millions? And they said, it's the ego. It's the idea of saying, I won. I have this on you. Chris Dishman, who was a defensive back for Houston back in the day, he won the pot. He said he took all the money in the locker room and taped it to his body. That's what he did with the money. That's how sort of like obsessed these guys were with winning. And it came to mind for me, again, Andrew may know this, the NFLPA and the Bountygate case actually used my story as an example of how these things have been going on, in locker rooms for years and years. But I just chuckled when, if you remember this, back in 2024, Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors made a bet for $10,000 over which one would win the Offensive Rookie of the Year award. And the NFL found out about it and came down on them hard. And they had to have additional education about gambling and things of that nature. Meanwhile, 10, 15 years earlier, all these players were talking about it. One of whom, by the way, was a guy named Troy Vincent, who is one of the leading, highest ranking executives in the NFL. But back then as a player, he was talking about the Smash for Cash program. So, it's just amazing how things have changed over, almost 30 years.
I just think let me just follow up, Bob, because I think they're not equivalencies. We can say that they make a lot of money, so they won't bet, but I just think that's not really the reason. And there's going to be a lot of rich kids losing a lot of money with these apps and sports betting. It's the juice, it's the psychology, it's whatever it is. I was an agent, as you know, many years. I had a defensive end, remain nameless, and he was making, I think, at one time up to $7 million a year. And I don't know why, but before a game, I said, "Hey, I'll give you $20 for every sack." And he played his ass off. He got got 4 sacks for $80. I mean, I don't know what it is.
Jordan is the perfect example, right? And I was there. I was there the day that he walked into practice after having been in Atlantic City the night before. Michael Jordan. It's the competitive. I hate to use the word addiction, but it exists.
Yeah. And now with the college athletes making hundreds, thousands, and millions, and you say, so they're not going to be vulnerable. Sure, they are. Sure. They're the same thing, whether they're making zero or making what they're making now in NIL. I think it's the same issue.
Let me ask you, Andrew, as someone who's been in those draft rooms, is one of the things that you have to now be cognizant of whether or not a player's in debt?
I think so. I mean, I think you look at the whole package, and some of the things you hear about players are, yeah, a lot of money spent and a lot of money can't hold on to his money. all goes into the mix when you evaluate players. I
Well,
always tell my clients, just one of everything, please. Just one girlfriend, one house, one car. That's it.
and you talk about the NIL valuations, the
Yeah.
money, you can go online and track it.
People know. Yeah.
These are, I guess, researched values, maybe best guesses, but I mean, the money that is paid out is on one level astonishing, on another level. I mean, this is a classic example of be careful what you ask for. For years, on the basis of fairness, college athletes who were and are the product were, the old, they get tuition, books, and whatever. You got to pay the labor force. All right, now you're paying the labor force, and now you've got. There was a player in a game I was watching the other evening who was at his fifth school in 4 years. And 4 years in four schools is not unusual. But just to stay on the gambling just for a second, though, Pew has done some polling that shows that just in a single year, the percentage of Americans who think that gambling on sports is not a good idea has got 34% to 43%. Now, public opinion in the face of making millions and billions of dollars for franchise and leagues will carry no suasion necessarily. Is this rising tide going to mean anything?
Bob,
People starting to
Bob,
realize.
I want to say that we could have seen this coming because the same thing happened in Europe. In Europe, and they were 100 years ahead of us in gambling, right? They had, at some point, they said, you know what? We have to stop putting it on jerseys. Some leagues banned gambling on jerseys. We have to stop putting it around, and then we have to stop putting it on broadcasts. Totally. And so they had the same aversion to, no, this is enough. We need it gone. So, I think we could have seen this coming from a mile away because they were the pioneers and they lived it way before us. And there was no way there was going to be another conclusion.
Hey, Bob, I think you know me pretty well. I'm a pretty disciplined person,
Yes.
right? I eat right, I exercise every day. I don't do I'm the most boring person in the world, but I will not have the apps on my phone. I don't trust myself to make
So
stupid
the
bets.
temptation would be that strong for you?
It's just that I could be sitting on watching a game and just punch the phone. I'm like, yeah, I think it's going to be a run, not a pass, or whatever it may be. I certainly don't let my kids have it, and I just think we're going to have some issues down the road.
I'll tell you a story. I established an account just for the hell of it when it was all legalized. Put $100 at I think it's Caesars, and I'm living at the time in New York State. And so I had like a $20 parlay going on my beloved Mets. This is 2 summers ago. One was straight, flat out win the game or not, and the other prong of the parlay was a runs line. So the Mets had to win. They were winning by two
By 2.5.
Yeah, whatever it was. I was in a situation in the ninth inning where I wanted the bullpen of my beloved team to blow the lead, but not all the lead. And I'm thinking to myself, how screwed up is this? And take this on a macro level. This is just like the kid in the Duhan jersey.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also so when I was at the Action Network reporting on the betting, we reported on this kid that was dubbed Parlay Pats, and he had hit so many parlays that he had won. We looked at his record, so he actually had netted something like $850,000. And I was reporting on him, and I was a little uncomfortable, but we knew from the other side, from the DraftKings side, like whether he said it was true or not. There was a couple things we couldn't do, but I was scared the whole time that there was something that we were missing because you're reporting on a civilian betting and the whole thing, and it really, I was just a little bit nervous. There was nothing missing except when he was named, he was charged by the FBI of threatening players, threatening to kill them after his parlay didn't hit because they did something. And after that, I said, wow, the league can't possibly, all these leagues can't possibly have enough security to make the players okay with what's about to happen. We had stories about the guy who would heckle someone in the third row. Is it distracting? Well, now you got a gambler who needs that parlay, and it's compounded to the fact that, if you don't do the right thing, he's going to lose $300,000.
Well, what's the
So
first thing pro athletes do when they go into the locker room now? They dive into their locker and they want to grab the phone and check social media, who's saying what about them. And increasingly, and Andrea, you've seen these accounts, and what Darren just related as a one-off maybe several years ago, a number of years ago, is now de rigueur. People are just breathing fire at these players because they've lost bets betting on them.
Yeah, I mean it's the vitriol that exists on social media is so profound. But to me, you're talking about parlays. Well, let's go to the kind of I don't know what sister cousin, I don't know what relation, but prop bets. All right, because this to me is the most insidious thing, because in a team game, obviously, it's pretty difficult to fix an entire game. But one individual's performance, as we already talked about with the pitchers, that's a whole different story. The prop bets that exist, I just don't see how that is. I just don't know how it's sustainable. I mean, what Major League Baseball came out and said, yeah, we're going to put a $200 cap. Is
Well,
that
what's that going to do?
right? That's what I'm asking. What is that going to do? And yet nobody's going to get rid of them because it makes too much money for these companies.
the
I
NBA,
just
wait, you have to hear this one. The
okay,
NBA, so
right,
they have official scorers, and the official scorers are at the table. I think most of the time they're working for the NBA.
right.
But when I started writing and gambling was legalized, I would get all these messages saying, that was a rebound. They only credited him for 10. This is the 11th rebound. Watch him hold hands, and the official word was that it was a team possession, right? It wasn't he didn't possess it fully, or he passed it too quickly, or whatever it was. And I had hundreds of people saying, will you go to the league and say that Luka Doncic had 14 rebounds? He had 14, he didn't have 13. And the league, I don't think the league expected this, whereby the stats, what would be a meaningless stat, unless you're going to get a triple double or something, right? What would be a meaningless stat, like, meant everything, meant thousands and thousands of dollars, and these guys couldn't take it.
Do you know that before Shadur Sanders' first NFL start in Week 12, DraftKings had a menu of 11 different prop bets that you could make on him, ranging from, is he going to have a rushing attempt longer than 10 yards or a completion longer 40? I I don't see how, the the dangers of a performance being manipulated just seems so strong to me. What can you do about prop bets? Because the other thing is, if you do try to outlaw them, does that just mean that people go offshore and we revert back to pre 2018, where because it it's never going to stop. So is it better to be legalized and officially monitored?
That's the party line, right? If we have legalization, we have scrutiny, we have full disclosure, we have oversight. The way, I mean, I remember Jimmy Vaccaro at telling me in Vegas, and here's a guy, by the way, when he was on the desk back in the 70s, was the guy to whom they came in with a shoebox full of money when they were fixing
Yeah.
Tulane.
All right.
Jimmy took that bet, right? It's Sonny's brother, Jimmy, and telling me this 25 years ago, how all the major books speak to each other and they know when they can see a blip in the line coming. And Chris Christie's saying that very same thing today, basically. Pulled his
And it
load.
happened, Bob. It happened, right? I mean, we
Well,
don't
we
know
know
if
that it happened. Perversely, the argument is, yes, there's going to be people playing games, so at least we're going to see and know about it. Where's the circuit
I mean, I
logic
think
to flip the ball at the end of this?
I think to bring it to where we started is what do we do? And
Right.
what happened with steroids is what got the Major League Baseball owners to change and start the Mitchell Report was Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa being hauled up to Capitol Hill because there were some deaths of young people using whatever they were using. What happened with concussions was DeMaurice Smith and Roger Goodell being hauled up on Capitol Hill and being compared to the tobacco industry for ignoring obvious ills of hitting each other's heads.
So does our culture have
But
it in
I
on the
slightly,
Hill to
I hear
drag them
you,
up there
Andrew,
and
but
make those same cases?
I
Right,
just
I-
wonder,
Is
you
there
know, I
a-
wonder if we're going to
Andrew,
get
but
to a point.
I slightly
Go ahead.
disagree because I have actually likened the gambling situation to the concussion issue in the sense that the league wants to educate, and we have now educated you, and buyer player beware. And I think the same thing is now happening with gambling. We have educated you, we have sent out our memos, we have you sign things to make sure that you understand the ills of gambling and things of that nature. And the optics may look really good, but you know how players are, you know how people are. They're still going to go and do it. I mean, the Detroit Lions players who did it, and some of them
Yeah.
said that they had had the education. Some of them said they never knew about it. There's signs posted. I just don't see that as being a you know as being a tenable
Well, I'm
situation.
less worried about the Lions or Calvin Ridley than I am our future. Like our young, I think young boys, young males, there's a real issue.
Okay, listen, I have 11-year-old twin sons right now.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
You
Do
guys-
they,
So
don't tell me
here
they
is
have
our
accounts.
problem.
Don't tell me they have accounts.
No, they don't have accounts, but
Okay.
they play various things that you could constitute. You could say it's gambling. The problem we live in right now is, we're asking, does integrity matter? And I'm not getting into politics, but you know what my next sentence is going to
Oh,
be.
God.
What's happening at the top? I'll move on. But what I will say is, we live in a degenerate economy now. If my sons aren't gambling and they're opening up cards. And when we went to card shops, when I went to card shops as a kid, I would open up cards, and if I got my favorite player, great. If my son does not get a 1 of 1 or a 1 of 10 or a gold rookie prism, he actually throws it in the garbage immediately. He might even get his favorite player. But if it's a base card and it doesn't have any value, potentially he can throw it out. And so my issue is, Andrew, I understand what world you want us to live in, but unfortunately, we might be in a world where it is the whole world, it's inescapable. So if you're not gambling, you're doing cards and you're betting on a player. If you're not doing that, you're doing fantasy. If you're not doing that, you're doing something else. We now have a situation. There was a great piece on it at 60 Minutes last night on Polymarket. Polymarket and Kalshi, someone could do a parlay today on Bitcoin under 80,000 and whether Zelensky is going to be the president of Ukraine at the end of the year. That's a parlay, people. That is now a parlay, and you can do that.
Okay,
Whether it's
let
going
me
to
ask
snow
you this.
tomorrow, and
Right.
so
Talk
it
to
doesn't
me.
end. The problem is, if I eliminate this, if I take out this, there's going to be something else, because there is, and I see it with my kids, there is a new expectation, partly due to social media and how they communicate, of dopamine. They need the dopamine. They need the adrenaline. It's a different expectation than what we had. And these things fill that in and accomplish that and get them what they want.
I didn't realize we booked Jonathan Haidt tonight. A great sociologist talking about taking the phones out of kids'
Yeah,
heads.
the phone
There's-
economy.
So Darren, the proverbial, explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old, okay? So prediction markets, the prediction market sector is projected to grow to nearly $95.5 billion by 2035. Annual growth rates approaching 47%.
And this was something that wasn't we never thought it would be legal because they
Right.
didn't get a license.
Right, but some Kalshi, they're trying to prove
Something
that it's
happened in
illegal.
2024. You tell me.
How much worse how much more dire are these markets, these prediction markets, this whole new burgeoning industry that's unregulated? How much more complicated is it going to make this whole gambling issue? This is what I want to know. Talk to me like I'm a 6-year-old.
Very complicated, because it is, if you can bet on anything And literally, right, Bob, remember when you'd always have the gambling guest on and he goes, I would bet on a toad race. And you're like, you're a degenerate. People are now betting on a toad race. I mean, literally, maybe my son would bet on a toad race right now because you can. So, I don't, the prediction markets were, even in 2018, these were $2 to $3 million markets that somehow skirted under US law, even though they weren't licensed. And I'll tell you, it's crazy because I will tell you, I did bet on Bitcoin under 90,000. And when I won, I didn't get my money right away. And I'm like, oh, this is crazy. You get your money right away if you're doing legal gambling. What's happening? It said they would settle at the end of the day. Now, that's not what any sports book has to do. DraftKings or FanDuel will lose their license if they don't immediately settle. So even with all of this, there's something that's strange and not right, but if you
Having
can
said all that,
yeah.
are we in a position where, with this explosion in prediction markets like this, Kalshi and whatever, that again, with the legalization of sports gambling, immediately the leagues figure out what's in it for me. How does the
Especially
sports
because the
establishment
NFL has
get in
already
the
come
middle
out
of
and
it?
said prediction markets have always constituted, quote, prohibited gambling activity.
Oh,
So
come
Andrew,
on.
to Bob's point, is it just a matter of time before the NFL and all
Too
these
much money for them
breaks
not to
these?
do this.
The NHL's already in,
Right, the NHL's in, right,
and
with
they'll be
Kalshi,
in.
right.
The president's son is on both boards. Like, this is not going away
That's a coincidence.
somehow.
Just children.
But I think what Darren said is really a bigger issue than sports. I mean, this idea of dopamine and what social media has done, and everyone getting their little hits. I mean, there is this metaphor that we're all walking around with slot machines in our pockets. And that's true for gambling and true for non-gambling. It's like everything's a bet. Like, we're in this society now where we have these mega computers in our pockets that do everything, including bet for us. I don't know the answer.
We're sounding like a bunch of old people here, guys.
And the world, and our hair is on fire, and the world's going to hell in a handbasket. Let's hit pause. This is great, by the way. This is great stuff.
Can I just add one other thing, Bob, just really quickly? And I know that Andrew can relate to this because how many years were you with the Packers?
10.
10 years with the Packers. I have been in more team facilities than I care to think about over my close to 40 years in the business. Insider information.
Yeah.
The idea that, this notion that the guy who's cleaning the locker room, the people who are serving your food, the equipment, everybody has access to proprietary information, injury information. And you know what? Somebody says just to his buddy as he's after work, yeah, man, lunch took a long time because so-and-so was down on his crutches. Crutches? Why is he in crutches? Why is he on crutches? There's so much information that's out there within the bubble of the facility, to think that it's going to just remain there. And this is, this again is what it was the Damon Jones situation. I mean, there's no way you can keep information private, right? I mean, you were there for 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to tell your buddy, yeah, I'm not going to play this week. My ankle hurts. That's fine. But the problem is, like Damon Jones, telling your buddy who knows buddies, who knows buddies, who knows buddies that are going to bet on it.
Right.
And again, clamping down, and when representing players, I always said you don't represent the player, represent the herd, like aunts, uncles, cousins, friends, girlfriends, wives, girlfriends and wives. I mean, you get the whole thing. So good luck.
I just want to say to everyone out there who is a gambler that even inside information doesn't help as much as you think it does. Whether it was the guys down at the hotel and before Super Bowl III looking at the Colts and saying, or looking at the Jets and saying that they looked tired and Joe Namath was out all night, or whether it was me and was not betting on this, but I was with, it was my alma mater, so I was with Northwestern for a team breakfast ahead of a Notre Dame game. Sat down with Trevor Simeon, and he said, Darren, he's like, I have such a horrible head cold. I've never felt this bad. And then Northwestern beat Notre Dame 43-40, and he had the best game of his career.
That's Michael
So like
Jordan.
again, for
Yeah, but
anyone
you
who
know,
ever gets inside information,
Prospect,
it's not as good as you think.
perhaps for team betting, but I mean, if you're talking about the specific performance of one player,
Oh
and
yes,
is
yes, a
that a
prop
tough team
bet.
bet? Like,
Yes.
yeah, that and I mean, all right, let's what do we make? What do we make of the way the NCAA has approached this? They have flopped and flipped whether players and personnel can wager on professional sports or not. And who the hell is going to police this?
I thought my head was when they first came out and said that they were going to allow college athletes to bet on pro sports. I thought my head was going to explode. I could not fathom who came up
Well,
with it, who thought
it
this
might
was
have been the
a good idea, and
smartest
why
thing to do
any
because it
athletic
seemed to be
directors, why any
obvious.
presidents would vote for this.
Well, the reasoning is, as someone in this world now, and the whole world of college sports has changed because of people like me. It's the lawyers. Like we have changed everything.
All the lawyers or what?
The lawyers go to court and say this engineering major can transfer every year. This student can bet on pro sports. This one, why can't athletes? And the judges are like, you're right. Why can't student athletes be like students? Why can't they do the same things that Mary, the music major, can and that Joe, the engineering major, can? And that's what was behind this pro sports thing. Of course, the world changed 5 days later with the indictments and Kash Patel. But listen, this is what's behind the change in college sports because you can't justify anymore as regulators, as governance, treating student athletes different than students. Now, the pro sports thing changed because of circumstance. Nothing happens in a vacuum. If that didn't happen, the indictments, I'm sure it would pass.
Are we agreed that the NCAA, if it's not, should be put on an ice floe and given an Eskimo funeral out to sea that it does? We had that still frame up a few
Can we
moments
just
ago.
say how much we miss Bob Lee? How much do we miss Bob Lee? Everybody
there
that's
are
listening,
six-
please.
six-
Oh, God.
16 cases of discipline in Division One from the NCAA last year, and all but 5 of them, I think, were settled within days. The point is, I mean, and BJ is going to get this full screen up. It basically shows you 16 Division One decisions, 14 negotiated resolutions
Yeah.
within 5 days. The point being, even if they wanted to and felt that they had somewhat close to the number of staff people to do this job, they couldn't. They don't have enough people to do this job. And Andrew, there you are advising schools on NIL and whatnot. To what extent are those 4 letters even part of a conversation anymore about anything?
Trying to have some governance in terms of structure. You know, we have this House settlement, back to lawyers. The whole system in college sports is based on a settlement, antitrust cases, Jeffrey Kessler, etc. And we have a cap, which is supposed to provide some structure, but no one trusts it. No one believes schools are going to act with integrity. No one believes that these deals are being reported. No one believes the CSC, which is set up by the NCAA, is able to review these thousands of deals that come in every day. So that's unfortunate.
Is that doubt justified?
I think so because of staff and because of this, Lane Kiffin. We see the way that people will sell their souls for top coaches and players, whether they have the money or not. We talk about revenue sharing. A lot of schools don't have revenue to share, but the big ones do. And the big ones will not be beholden to NCAA rules and regulations if they want to spend $30 million on a football roster instead of $15 million. So I'll say this. The NCAA has value, but the NCAA is regulating Alabama football and Immaculata field hockey. Like, how does one organization regulate, again, Georgia football and Bryn Mawr swimming?
But are they regulating it, Andrew? If the reportability of, first you got revenue sharing, then you got NIL contracts.
They're trying. I
If
mean,
you're not confident that all the facts are on the table, this is just kabuki theater.
So
well,
did-
the last thing I'll say is there's going to be a case. I have no inside information, speaking of gambling, but there's going to be a case that X school violated these principles, went outside the cap, did whatever they did, and that will be the test case. And the school may sue back or whatever it is. But the only way this happens is if all of us see consequences for alleged cheating in college sports. And if we don't,
What's cheating? What's cheating in
Wait.
20?
I have inside information on something that has not been reported, and I'm going to report it here, okay? The inside
Okay.
information is there is a school who is definitely way beyond the cap. If, there's likely to be earned and not likely to be earned, but if you take the bonuses and everything, they're beyond the cap, but they think that the player is not going to earn that bonus potentially. But if they do, then the organization, the booster, is willing to pay the fines, whatever happens.
well, the fines may be
Who
probation.
knows? Who
It may
knows?
be no bowl games. It
Yeah,
may
I
be,
know.
reduced cap. It may be a lot of things.
So did you see the news that came out late today about Congresswoman Lori Trahan is
Another bill.
introducing a College Athletics Reform Act, which, quote, establishes a federal NIL policy, creates a bipartisan commission for governance recommendations, and amends the Sports Broadcasting Act. So, it almost, when I read things like this, it almost reminds me, might be a specious analogy of how leagues want salary caps to just protect teams from themselves, right? That's what it seems to me. Please protect us from ourselves. We need to pass this. We need to pass the SCORE Act. Andrew, is there any feasibility if these bills get passed? Is it going to do anything
They
to
won't even get out of committee.
I hope they do actually, because listen, Andrew, at the Packers, we had 3 people in cap, including myself, and the NFL had 20 people in cap compliance. The NCAA, like I just keep talking about, has no resources for this. They set up the CSC to review thousands of deals that now have 4 people. They're a startup. They get the guy from baseball, Sealy, he brings in his friends. I fault the NCAA for not getting ready for this. Like they sort of thought about this after the settlement. Come on.
Well, it's not been a beacon of
federal regulation?
visionary leadership in the last 15 years. It certainly hasn't.
And I don't
Somebody
blame
mentioned-
Baker. I don't blame Baker. I
No, it's
blame
not Baker's fault. But Charlie,
Yeah.
the boat was underwater by the time Charlie got there.
Right.
Mark put it there.
One more thing, Bob. The
Yeah.
the fact might be that the salary cap has made it more fair because now everyone can play to a certain point. And if you look at the SEC rosters this year, they are not as deep as they've been in the past, and it's more spread out because someone else can schools, people feel better about. Obviously, they're offering money versus the SEC having the reputation of being the under the table conference. And
Well, that was the SWC, the Southwest Conference Sure Will Shield.
yes, it was Eric Dickerson. And
That was
Craig
high
Hayden.
art back in the 80s. There, somebody mentioned the trigger words Lane Kiffin before, which brings us to a little jog on the road, talking about integrity and values. American higher education. Now, somebody else used the phrase selling their soul before, which assumes that someone has a soul to sell them to begin with. Who wants to take a whack at this? How much should be laid at the feet of college presidents for the college side of this entire question?
How can you justify these payouts? How can you justify the kind of payouts that they're talking about? I mean,
It's not educational money. They'll make the
The
point.
love to win, the donors. It's the donors. It's the love to win. It's we must win at whatever cost. And that's why, as of today, it won't be the case in 2 weeks. But that is why LSU is paying Ed Orgeron, Brian Kelly, and now Lane Kiffin,
Right.
on the same day.
And what
This is from
Kiffin's
Axios, by
buyout,
the way.
what Kiffin's potential buyout would be 72 million. I mean, that's insane. Especially when you consider his track record with the number of jobs that he's held in both professional and college sports.
These are the highest paid public employees in the country.
Well, on top of that, you've got the governor of Louisiana in this up to his elbows and beyond. In Ole Miss, you've got the Secretary of State in the middle of that whole state
Well,
situation.
look, how did Bill Belichick get to UNC?
He called Marco Rubio on the friggin' telephone. He called the
guess if I-
Secretary of State.
Exactly right. Right.
If I had to defend it, Villanova before we got the Pope, Bob, we had a couple.
Did somebody reach out about the Pope to see if
Yeah, we got the Pope. I was
or
getting all
what?
these texts. You got
Easiest
the
job in
Pope.
the world, not Andrews, but advancement at Villanova. But that's another story.
His salary is $1. His
And his
salary is $1.
contract, I'm sorry.
I guess before, well, my point was before we got the Pope, we had in 3 years, we had two national championships, and the admissions, I'm sorry, the applications, the donations, the quality of student, everything went way up after those, way up. And now the only thing I can justify for everything we're talking about is these sports are these schools' storefront. These sports are what they're selling out there. When you think of pick a name in the SEC, you don't think of chemistry department, right? You don't think of their engineering department. This is what you think of. And if they have the money, see, I just don't know. I'm advising schools that don't have those kind of funds. Like, how is Louisiana paying 80 million, $100 million for two coaches? So I don't know.
They're donor dollars, they're not public dollars.
Raising
But-
Cane's, Todd Graves.
Well,
That's a lot.
Southeast Conference country. This is a cultural issue. This
Yes.
is into the water supply. This is not. It's not. You don't walk down the street on any of the many fine towns on the main line and have people talking Villanova football, right? You walk down Duval Street, Key West, New Year's Eve, and you can start a fist fight talking about the SEC because games are blaring out of every bar you walk past.
I mean,
It's just part of life, right? How do you explain that the SEC is sometimes, we're talking about the poorest, most poverty-ridden places in the country, and these people have found a way to go to the national championship game. It's literally 8% of their gross revenue, but that's what they're doing. That's part of the culture.
Yet
Listen-
Alabama will tell you that since the Saban era and that run of championships, their admissions or their applications have skyrocketed, and for the first time ever, majority of students at the University of Alabama are from out of state. They've been attracted. But the obverse of that is at schools that are spending all this money on the front porch, as you will, the shop window of their athletic department. You've got kids going into lifetime debt to get degrees who aren't athletes, right? Even at state schools. I mean, you're still paying private schools as problems magnify. So all of that, yes, you're building the brand of university and building that front porch to build the attractiveness of the brand and of the school. But all those tens and hundreds of millions of dollars and all those buyout figures that are flying about versus students for whom like $1 million, that's life-changing money for some of these smaller departments in an academic environment.
Bob,
Gets lost on the sofa.
Bob, what about kind of what you just said, which was, but we're going to talk about the athlete side. When an athlete is clearly not going to school, right? We've had assumptions, but if an athlete is clearly not going to school, then is there the affinity anymore? The laundry? Do we care as much if they're just hired guns and they're going to go from one place to another to another?
That's
I
a
get,
question
I hear
can't
from
tell
people all
apart.
the time that they're turned off by exactly what Darren said. And, it hit me a couple years ago watching the NFL draft, and this 18th pick is so-and-so from Tennessee. And then the highlights are from Oklahoma
Yeah.
or the highlights are from South Carolina. Like, wait, I thought, and that's what we're dealing with. I'm dealing with athletes that are on their fourth school or their fifth school. And yeah, it's a little more money each time, and we can't discount playing time and opportunity and all that as well. But in 20 years, where are they going? Where's their tribe? Where's their feeling towards a school? Like, and it's again, we sound like old guys saying that, but that's
The evolution of fandom, I think, is really fascinating because you're pointing to one thing, which is the lack of loyalty, right? Friend of mine was telling me a story. She was at Giants game with one of her friends who was all decked out in Giants gear, and all of a sudden, he starts rooting for a player on the opposite team, and she leans over, and he's got his app open, and he was, one of his fantasy players was on the other team. And she looks at him quizzically and he just says, I love the Giants, but I love money even more. And so what happens to fandom? Because we hear, oh, gambling, it's going to make people more invested, it's going to bring more fans in. But on the other hand, does it turn people off that you've got all this player movement and things of that? I don't know what the answer to that is.
Well, I know my son's friends last year for Halloween went as 6 Miami Dolphins players because Tyreek Hill and whatever, because those were their fantasy players. And this is New Jersey. I mean, you couldn't find a Jet or a Giant anywhere, but there were 6 Dolphins.
Kids in Jersey are so smart, aren't they?
So you know, I'm what I'm really curious about is because I know you're going to get to questions very soon. So Manny, I see you there, and I owe you an email. Don't worry, I've not forgotten. But one thing that I'm really curious about, because one of my friends, by the way, who I was at Thanksgiving with this year, and I was peppering him with all these questions, and it came down to, do you care? Do you care about gambling? Do you care about? And I want to hear from these young people because we keep joking that
Only
we're
17
all clutching and
participants.
things of that nature, and we're all nervous. You know, we're all worried about what's going on. Do young people care?
125 extraordinary women from across the country will be selected as
Oh,
finalists.
Hi,
please,
Stephen.
whoever in the room, could you please mute your mics if you're not.
There we
part of
go.
it?
There we go.
Thank you very much.
I'm curious about some of the young people. Do you care about, is gambling ruining sports? What really resonates for people who are not of our generation?
And same with Andrea, same with this NIL and moving around stuff, because
Right.
we're of the generation, oh, it was so great to see Christian Laettner all those 4 years and the Duke teams and the UNLV teams and
Peyton Manning staying at Tennessee and to
yeah, but
graduate.
I think maybe young people are just used to, yeah, he was at this school that last year, and now we got him at this school, and then he'll go to that school.
Well, and I don't think it's an unfair reach to say it's just on a grand scale, it's the same thing as what's on my phone. Keep scrolling. What's the attention? 140 characters, 280 characters. That's our attention span. Boy, I sound like an old guy tonight, don't I? I'm
We
sorry
all
I didn't
do.
do that. Well, as Andrea has kindly pointed out, she acting as the Big Ben of this panel. We're about an hour in, so let's if we can, if you do have a question for the panel, and you are in the room and you're not watching on YouTube, but you're watching on Zoom, you have the ability to pose a question. Electronically raise your hand, and we will get to you and take you from there. Does anyone, do we have anything queued up, BJ?
Not yet, but while we're waiting, Manny, will put you on the spot. To Andrea's question, do you care?
Me personally, I do, especially because I'm a big baseball fan, and we're in an era where not only is gambling a big concern, but also the health for starting pitchers. And I think probably the easiest prop bet that no one would raise an eyebrow for that pitchers can manipulate is, let's say the line is 4.5 innings, and after the fourth, he just goes to the skipper and says, I have shoulder discomfort. That's normal. That's so normal. How many starting pitchers in June during the regular season just leave in the middle of games like that? So as a baseball fan, I'm very concerned for the integrity, and this goes apart from the Emmanuel Clase and the Ortiz, a little more obvious. But I think there's so many ways outside of, I think baseball's in the most danger, to be honest, because outside of football and basketball and the other major sports, I think baseball can be manipulated easily. And to get to Kramer's point, I'm also concerned for the health of kids in my generation. I've seen kids get very consumed by this gambling issue. I personally stay away from it because I'm a very obsessive person. Brant was talking about that. Andrew was talking about that. I can't have the apps on my phone either. But yeah, I think it's a concern not only for the integrity of the sport, but also everything you guys said with the fans.
But Manny, would it prevent you from watching?
Well, I love the game too much to stop watching, so I guess I wouldn't. But definitely for the casual fan, someone who and baseball right now is in a time where they're growing immensely worldwide. I think this might turn off a lot of casual American fans that see this going on. So for me personally, I'm not at risk of losing interest, but I think a lot of casual fans might.
You said you've seen young people, some of your contemporaries, consume. That was your word.
Yeah.
the interest in gambling? Describe what you've seen.
So it's an obsessive nature of, instead of, because I mean, I love talking sports for as long as I can remember, and I've never been into talking over unders. I like to talk about the narrative, anything that any journalist would like to talk about. What's going into the game? What are some strategies, game plans? Is this starting pitcher gonna go over 7 innings? I mostly think about that because of what the manager's thinking, not because there's money on the line. So I see kids nowadays that when we talk about sports, all we talk about is these lines, and they don't necessarily care, like you guys said, about true fandom of a certain team. They care more about money in their pockets, and I think it just, there's no, I guess the word, it's not genuine. It's not genuine, and kids kind of lose their first love of why they even like the sport to begin with, and it just becomes the entire topic of conversation.
The issue is also that money is what drives a lot of society today, even in the capitalistic America that always existed. Take that away. Money, kids are so obsessed with money more than we ever were. The value of having something is not just I have it, I'm enjoying it, I like it. The value is so much what people think of how much money it's worth. And I think that's come from influencers who show their, when my sons are going through YouTube and they see someone who has $1 billion, this $1 million car and this Ferrari, and that's what they love. They love the guy who has all the money. And so money has become the object in many ways.
You know what I hear, and I'm curious what the 11-year-olds think, Darren. I hear this constantly from people. The growing proliferation of gambling ads drives people crazy. I mean, we all saw it. Certain sports news networks that were covering the Class A, covering all these things, and then at the bottom of the screen, you got the advertisement for betting, and you can't make this up. Or they'd go to a commercial. The commercial break would have a commercial. I just it feels like such a turnoff for watching, because we're now talking about watching games. Because to me, where's the numbers that are showing people are watching less? We know what the numbers are for the NFL. They're still off the charts. And until that's impacted, I don't see any motivation for change. Do you, Andrew? Do you, Darren?
What would it take, Andrew, for the NFL to actually be concerned? I mean, yeah, you're going to have this guy and that guy who gets caught for betting when they shouldn't, but no one really has played with the game results or prop bets in the NFL. How deep a wound will there have to be before this, like, holy crap, we got to deal with this?
It's hard to come up with a scenario, Bob. It's like so many outside the lines shows we did, whether it was about the Kaepernick stuff, whether it was about concussions, whether it was about the NFL. Yeah, it's like, what are all these threats to their continued popularity and prosperity? All seem to fall by the wayside. On the gambling side, it would have to be something just monumental where a lot of players are involved, maybe administration of teams are involved. It's unfortunate because we see after every Sunday just reams of criticism about officials, about refereeing, and then there may be a few comments here or there. Well, maybe it's gambling and this and like, but it never really sticks, and it's hard to conflate the two in a big way. So I don't know what
The
it would
cost of doing
take.
business, basically. It's
Yeah.
the extraneous noise at the margins. We'll have this suspension, we'll have that suspension, but no one's thrown a Super Bowl that we know of yet, right?
And we know how big gambling was before it was legalized with football.
I
Now,
think the greatest existential threat used to be, and you know this, Andrew, this was the concern. This would be the thing that would keep everybody from the commissioner to every executive awake at night, is God forbid a player dying on the field.
right.
And we came about as close as you could get with Damar Hamlin. And amazing how it was all turned into something positive. Just
It was
unbelievable.
it was Disneyfied into not a fairy tale,
Disneyfied. Hmm.
but God bless the young man, did well, and they rightfully praised all the medical help that was right there. And Hamlin's attitude about the whole thing was right in concert with it.
He's the poster man for the type of person that you would want if God
Well,
forbid.
two things can be true at the same time.
Right.
Football is a violent sport that may eventually kill someone. And when confronted with a situation like Hamlin's, football responded magnificently, despite what was going on behind the scenes to possibly still play that game tonight, which is a whole separate value laden question.
Right. But now, but does the existential threat now become what the NBA has gone through or what Major League Baseball has gone through? Because I'm kind of the mind, as Bob just said, it would be dismissed as it's an isolated thing. It's not endemic to the sport. It's just a one-off, and we're gonna. I
Tell me
mean,
a franchise value that's been affected by it. You can't,
right,
Not.
right.
I mean, the
If you-
person hasn't been born yet who has lost money buying into pro sports in the last 40 years.
Right.
I mean, I think maybe the answer to question of what could be an existential threat to the NFL should be answered by this younger group watching us. Is
What would make you not want to watch the NFL? That's
yeah,
it.
is it 3.5 hours too much? Is it just like, is it too burdensome, a viewing experience too heavy? It's just too much.
My sons have never watched a full game ever.
Yeah.
They're sports fans. They love the NFL.
So we have
Why do you think that is? I mean, the action is fair. I mean, it's
I can
fairly
tell you.
consistent. It's coming at you. It's coming
They
at you.
don't they don't have they are taught in life not to have the attention span to be able to sit there. They will watch Red Zone because if it's 40 seconds at a time, but they cannot, and by the way, they don't want to go to a football game even though they love it. They just don't want, they can't, I guess I can't jam them with enough hot dogs at this point.
But you know what? I don't want to sound snarky, but if and when they get older and they can possibly place a bet on that game, I bet you they'll watch an entire game. Because I think that you have a lot of people, regardless of their age, but if they're betting, they have that totally
But
different.
they'd be betting on 8 games, Andrea. That's
They
the
could be,
difference.
right? But they could also be having that one, that one, even if it's just a fantasy thing.
They've
I
learned well from their dad.
Yeah. Hmm.
one
Uh,
thing, one thing that I kind of wonder about, if you look at the whole issue of what to do about this issue, do you think, either of you, that we'd ever be in a position where there's just across all sports, any player or coach who bets on a sport, you are banned from the game? Because to me, if you take the sport away, not only are you hurting your own livelihood, you're hurting your team. And seeing that, would that be a deterrent from said behavior?
To,
Do you
to,
ever,
to bet on anything
to bet on a sport? Certainly on your own sport.
on your own sport.
On your own sport.
But because where's the line? You're not going to get companies to not advertise and to not buy advertising. There's too much money involved, right?
Yeah.
And what
BJ,
is the line? What is the blurred line about betting? But you don't have to actually call a bookie and make a bet or do it online. It's more, what about front offices that decide to not play their stars late in the season? Players don't tank. Players aren't going to miss shots play unless they're, on the take gambling, but it's the front offices that play lesser talent and they're gambling on a better draft pick. So is that in
Never bet
integrity
week
there?
17 and 18, folks.
well, how
Never
about
bet.
load management in the NBA?
Their integrity with that? Yeah. I mean, all these are blurred lines.
So the answer
So
is
we
go-
have
Go ahead.
we have a we have a
Somebody just texted me that's on here with a very interesting question that we haven't used these words before, but I ask you this: what about AI and Chat GPT? Will people care about tuning into the game at all if they just use AI?
If it continues to have a 40% wrong, I mean, you can't get anything accurate over there. They'll tell you the wrong score.
Well, if you have AI teams, the payroll, Andrew, is nice and low.
There you go.
BJ, did you say we have
Yes, we have a student athlete here among us. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Will. Will Gahuli is a freshman. He's on the cross country team. Gets lots of education on gambling. Is also from Indiana, and a die-hard Hoosiers fan. So I'm going to turn to you, Will. Do you care about gambling, and would you bet on your Hoosiers?
Yeah, I feel like right now in the current climate of Division 1 athletics, I think it's a genuine concern, the rise of gambling, because like even these sites, like I obviously don't participate in gambling. I'm not allowed to. I'd be risking everything by doing so, but just how easily accessible all this is, like it's gonna put a lot of people in jeopardy. And me myself, like obviously I'm a fan of the game. Like I've watched college football forever, and I personally would not place a bet on it because, especially like Andrea pointed out, like being an athlete, I feel like if I were to have put a bet on, like, let's say Indiana football, I would be like just watching that game like a hawk, not even caring about if my team's going to win, but more about like if my bet's going to place, because now I have something monetary at stake compared to something that's like, I want to say emotional at stake. And I think also with athletics, I think there's going to be a lot of programs that run into issues because, like, especially for myself as a non-revenue generating sport, like obviously the NIL and track and cross country is not going to be there like it is in football or basketball. And I think it's going to lead to a lot of kids, and especially in some of those smaller sports, they're going to be like, hey, like, I've got some inside information, especially if they're able to find like offshore sites to bet on college athletics. I think that's going to be a huge issue moving forward, is some of these smaller sports getting involved with stuff that's going to put their programs and their eligibility at stake.
Will, let me ask you if I can, as a runner in a so-called non-revenue sport, which I always hate saying that. It just sounds like, delegating. You work as hard as anybody and everybody in your sport. Are there NIL funds available to you and members of your team?
I'd say there are like certain funds available, but the opportunities are so like far and few. And also from just talking to some of my teammates who have had deals in the past, the ones like if you're not like a top like 2 or 3% in your field for let's say like cross country, the deals you're gonna get are like super spotty. Like there's a lot of organizations that they'll come through with all these clauses, but they often don't fulfill most of their promises. And really the only ones that receive like a lot of benefit, and especially like financial compensation, are like the potential like Olympic caliber athletes, I'd say.
Meanwhile, on your same campus, you've got basketball players making in the high six figures. I just pointing that out. I mean, it's you work hard, they work hard.
Yeah, I feel like it's a huge disparity that's growing amongst athletics. I feel like will hopefully be addressed at some point, because especially like a bunch of smaller conferences, like you're seeing like entire programs just being shut down completely. Like I know there's many schools, especially the SEC schools, just put in a bunch of roster limits for a bunch of smaller sports. I know cross country is only now 10 athletes per roster. And then I think track, it's like 1 point something athletes per event right now. So you're seeing a lot of attention being shifted away from some of the Olympic sports, which is kind of unfortunate because that's what kind of brought up the NCAA. And it's really sad to see that's all being shifted towards like these schools are just money, money, money. And that's kind of where we're at right now.
It
One
seems
of the first things with the advent of NIL when it first started, one of the first things that came to mind for me were Olympic sports. All the years that I covered the Olympics, and in particular swimming, and so many of these we're not in Russia, we're not in South Korea, where everything is done by done by the government. You're relying on colleges for a lot of these programs, and these would be the first to go if there is only a limited amount of money. I don't know, Andrew, if you have anybody that you represent that is in any Olympic sports, but it's real. The programs are in such peril.
I'm worried about it. You know, I'm on the school side, but I'm very whatever I can do in my consulting to say, please don't cut non-revenue sports because of the value of having these sports, even if they're not revenue making. I worry about it because people think there's an unlimited, pool of money. There's not. Maybe there's 3 schools that do have that, but schools
Well,
are gonna
have
have to
these
get
kids go to school and help raise the GPA of the student athletes. At
schools are
least
gonna have to
let
get
them go
money
to
from
school.
somewhere. And cutting sports is a way to get money. I worry about men's sports more than women's because of Title IX. I worry about men's golf, men's tennis, men's swimming, men's lacrosse, men's gymnastics.
Yeah.
I worry about that.
But you don't see $50 million buyouts of a men's gymnastics coach.
Yeah.
Amazingly enough. We
Just
have touched
wait, Bob.
just about every point on the compass this evening. I can't thank Andrea, Andrew, and Darren enough for convening kind of an out-of-body putting the band back together moment. We have touched the question of integrity, of values, of money, and all the questions in between. BJ, it's been fun. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you. Thank you to Bob. Thank you to our panelists, Andrea, Darren, Andrew. Thank you all for joining us. This has been a terrific conversation and one we're just starting. So stay tuned for more thought-provoking events like this. Thanks again for joining and good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
guys.
much.
Enjoyed it.
Good stuff. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you. How was the turnout?
We got 5 times as many people on YouTube.
Really?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Because
Yeah.
a lot of the people that were on were my friends.
Yeah, no, I was looking at the Zoom and then I was looking at YouTube and I was just like,
Yeah.
what the heck? I mean, it was just
Right.
that's where the kids went.
Yep. No, that's interesting. That's interesting. Anyway, this is one of my friends calling me right now. It was just
All right.
anyway,
All
great.
right.
Keep me posted
You
about
too.
that. Oh, send links or send something I can
I
post.
will.